All right, so what you need to know about SOPA and PIPA. First, SOPA stands for Stop Online Privacy Act, and then PIPA stands for Protect Intellectual Property Act. Pretty much, this was something that was being sponsored. It was legislation that was being sponsored, and the internet advocates, lobbyists got together and began to advocate electronically, suggesting a blackout, and they executed that on January 18th, 2012, right? This is the first occurrence of this sort of mutiny ever, right? So what we're going to discuss today is a case study of this first occurrence and how effective it is in electronic advocacy.
Web surfing may have been interrupted today as Ashley Glass reports thousands of sites are either blacked out or displaying some sort of protest over two bills making their way through Congress right now.
SOPA and PIPA, legislation designed to crack down on the sale of pirated U.S. products overseas. Critics say the bills could infringe on free speech, pointing out it could force big search engines like Google to stop linking users with websites that file share.
Tech companies did a good job of trying to boil all of it down to sort of one sentence, saying it's going to break the internet. This is going to ruin the internet as we know it. And SOPA is now becoming sort of similar in that it's a really lightning rod word, and people are taking it and really running with it.
This debate has slowed the process in Washington. As for SOPA, the House bill, a hearing to discuss it has been delayed.
And then within 48 hours, the sponsors from the bill were backing away from it, and ultimately the bill was shelved. So this case study that we're going to discuss, it is in the Technology, Activism, and Social Justice in a Digital Age book, edited by John G. McNutt. This is my assigned reading, and I'm going to be talking from Section 3, Chapter 8, Advocacy of, by, and for the Internet, the 2012 Protest Against Anti-Piracy Legislation by Lori Brainerd and Justine Augury. All right, let's go. All right, so in 2008, the Center for Lobbying in the Public Interest defined lobbying as a specific, legally defined activity that involves stating your position on specific legislation to the legislators and or asking them to support your position. So that's what we have for the definition of lobbying. So lobbying is a little different from advocacy in that it really reflects the distinction between the type of organizations or individuals that would engage in the activity, right? It really speaks to what the outcome or the hope is to be. It's some sort of legal measure as opposed to just action. In this case, we kind of saw in that outcome a little of both. What SOPA and PIPA showed us is that lobbying and advocacy are two different activities that are can be effective used together, but they're both actually separate, and we don't really understand yet. More studies need to be conducted in order to understand the viscosity of the power of the internet, right? The freedom or the right to not be censored. We see in Iran, we see in other countries, in other places around the world, that censorship is a huge issue. And this legislation would have pretty much legally allowed censorship on the internet, right? I'm going to share a video in a few minutes that's going to break that down. But again, the difference in lobbying is a formal process that's meant to appeal to legislators on matters related to policy, whereas advocacy, it can be grassroots, it can be targeted at legislators, but it's really cause-driven. It's really meant to advocate in some way for an under-resourced community or group, and it's meant to try to seek solutions on behalf of that group and equity and what's fair and what would serve the general public. The main thing is to shape public opinion. And we saw that with this movement that was ultimately led by technology groups, right? Because you had people in Hollywood that were pushing for this legislation, right? But then you had the tech groups that said, no way, this is a violation. And ultimately they backed out of everything. And it's a phenomenon. It's a phenomenon, but the study showed that that advocacy is actually even more powerful as a lobbying tool when it's used on the net in order to advocate for causes.
Law. And it gets even creepier than that, because to be considered this, you don't even just have to enable or facilitate, which is almost anything. One could argue even a computer is enabling or facilitating this on some level. But you are considered to be a site dedicated to theft of U.S. property, even if you do nothing illegal, even if you don't even enable anything illegal, but if you just take actions that make it difficult for authorities to confirm that you're doing something illegal. What this would do, and this would do it in the virtual sense, is say, look, by taking the deliberate action of closing your shutters and locking your doors, which makes it hard for federal agents to confirm that you're doing illegal things, just by doing that, that itself is an illegal act. So this is maybe one of the creepiest and draconian intrusions of privacy that I've ever heard of.